Fitness is actually one of the biggest use cases for VR currently, which I don't think anyone thought that putting a headset onto their head was just like a gateway into fitness, but it kind of has been.
In one of the many dystopian worlds of Black Mirror, this one from the second episode of the first season, citizens ride exercise bikes to generate power in exchange for credits that subsidize their daily cost of living and let them skip commercials. In Total Recall, Sharon Stone's character practices her tennis swing right at home, with the aid of a holographic model and a computer voice prompting her to stroke and pivot and serve and shift. And in space travel adventures, from Outland to Star Trek to Buck Rogers, exercise equipment gets the same thick coating of future tech as everything else on the wooden sets of those spacecraft. It makes sense that the same futuristic gizmos that help our heroes in science fiction would percolate down to the real-life tech of today, but I had no idea how much tech there was to talk, or how much I had to learn about a lot of it. From the simple tedium of calorie counters, to the overnight ubiquity of the Fitbit, to the parasocial popularity of the Peloton, the health and fitness category is one of the biggest in technology. And because I spend more time podcasting than pumping iron, I've brought on a real pro to tell us what's worth paying attention to and where our own future of fitness tech might take us. This is Living in the Future, a podcast powered by MediaTek that tells the story of technology that's evolved beyond the TV screen, transformed from fantastical cinematic science fiction to actual products that change the way we live and work. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, and this is episode 9, Fitness, but Smarter. This podcast is sponsored by MediaTek, whose chips are just about everywhere, including your workout routine. MediaTek powers all sorts of devices that keep you fit and healthy, like exercise bikes, ellipticals, treadmills, and rowers. It makes the high-performance chipsets behind cutting-edge features like voice assistance and AI to make your fitness training smarter. And MediaTek also uses the latest connectivity technologies, so you don't miss a moment when you're streaming workouts. Thanks to MediaTek for sponsoring this podcast. Victoria Song, you are senior reviewer of all things wearable and fitness tech for The Verge, with previous bylines at Gizmodo, PC Magazine. Victoria, welcome to the future.
Thank you for having me here.
Glad you are here. Are you tired of people starting conversations about fitness tech with, I'm big into fitness whole pizza in my mouth?
A little bit. It's actually, I think more people who are like new to the space are the ones more excited talking to me about it. They're just like, oh, I just got into this and, I love all my steps. These are great. Or, then it's like two camps, those people and then the Garmin fanatics who have been wearing Garmins for 2 decades or
Yes.
probably not two actual decades, but so long, and it's the same Garmin from the last 10 years, and it's a real passionate crowd.
One of my very favorite side effects of being a technology reviewer is that sometimes if you put off returning a review sample long enough, they will just stop bothering you about it. And Garmin has been very kind to let me hold on to a Mark Captain Gen 2 review sample for a long time. So I bought the first gen, which was way too much money. And I'm just happy that I get to hold on to it for them. But we'll come back to Garmin in a second. I think to properly start things off, it is important for me to be true to myself and lead off with the Nintendo Wii. because, man, this thing changed my life. My dad got it as a Christmas present. The Nintendo Wii turned him into like a world-class bowler and tennis star, at least in the confines of our living room. And I remember playing, with him, and I genuinely would work up a sweat in our tournaments. And I kind of thought at the time, like, oh, wow, this is what it is. This is what the future of fitness is going to be. You don't have to go run in circles outside and be boring. You can play games. But like 15 years later, even though this Nintendo Switch and other consoles have similar capabilities, the gaming as fitness craze seems to have really tempered somewhat. So do you think people just got tired of the fad? I mean, is there any chance of a similar craze taking hold in the future with more advanced technology?
I do.
Yeah.
I do think so because
Really?
gamification is one of the core tenets of fitness tech. And it might not be that you're playing like games more frequently, but there are elements from games that are like in a bunch of smartwatches and a bunch of fitness apps and Pelotons. Like you earn badges, you compete with friends. Like there's always this gamification like element to it, like streaks. Like you don't know how many people come up to me telling me about their streaks, and I'm just like, I love that for you. I don't know how you have a 1,000-day streak. That's
Oh,
incredible. But
okay. So
that
number of days
does,
spent continuously doing
yeah,
logging in or getting exercise. Got it. Got it.
yeah.
Got it.
So like there's that element of it. But then, I don't think it ever truly went away. You do have things like Just Dance, Nintendo, Ring Fit. Those were really popular during the pandemic as ways to kind of work out at home that felt, it's like sort of like a pill pocket that you give to your pets. You have something fun and you put the healthy thing in the inside.
Yeah, that's what I
So
need. Right. I need to be convinced that I'm not doing something that is good for me. I need to be convinced that I'm
yeah,
having fun while tricking myself into something
yeah.
healthy. I get
And
that.
VR is I think the next frontier of that, just because if you've ever talked to someone who plays Beat Saber or
Hmm.
Supernatural, those are workouts. Les Mills, famous gym chain Les Mills, they're like super into VR. They have like a dance app on MetaQuest, and they also have like a body combat boxing app on there. So I think like the elevation, not the elevation, but the evolution of all of this is just kind of moving from video game consoles that we have into the VR space, which is really interesting because I still don't know how they're going to answer the sweat question.
This is I was just you're reading my mind because I was just gonna say like, okay, I get it. Some of these are light enough to wear in your face and you can kind of be comfortable, but yeah, the light seal, right? Or the whatever foam is
Yeah.
keeping in contact with your face, like you sweat through that in a minute, right? Don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. There are some, like, I've seen some accessories where you can just like swap them out or you put like a little cloth. I went to a VR arcade like ages and ages ago in Tokyo while I was living there.
Cool.
And they just had like these little cloths that they would sanitize them and like put on your face before you put the light seal on. So that might
Oh,
be like a very lucrative accessories market down the line. But yeah, I
got it.
think no one has properly answered the question of, I just sweat in this thing, and what do I do now?
Well, we're going to come back to the AR aspect of that a little bit in a second. I want to stay in the past for 2 seconds to talk about another thing that gave me momentary hope that I could be healthier, which was the like fitness apps. I've thrown a lot of money at Lose It. I spent my time with my Fitness Pal, and none of them really stuck with me because I could not deal with the utter tedium of counting and logging my calories
Preach,
manually. It's just the
preach.
worst. So I think there was a little bit of momentary hope that we got recently where you had that Humane AI pin demo where he's like holds up the fistful of almonds and it's like, how many calories are in this? And then the pin gives him a completely inaccurate answer and he takes it as fact. Is there any hope though that similar technology built into an app might enable us to like point our phones at like, a can of not a can of something with a barcode on it that you could have scanned with Lose It, but like a plate of spinach and chicken, and be like, how much is this? Can you log this? Like, is that on the horizon at all?
I think it's on a very, 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 very far off horizon. And
Mm.
even then, like the smart kitchen, they have refrigerators that are supposed to kind of be able to tell what's in your fridge. So I think that's along a very similar thought
Oh.
process of using AI to use your camera, see what's there, run it against a database. But
Hmm.
what I'm going to say is everyone should have the freedom to ditch calorie counting forever because it's completely inaccurate.
Really?
There's a reason I, in my reviews, never ever test or evaluate the calorie tracking because it's just impossible to verify. There's so many different algorithms that could go into it. One company is going to use one that's different from another. And then on top of that, your body is not a standardized formula. Like these are all estimates. And you could have a condition like I have polycystic ovary syndrome, which means just on a baseline, I'm going to be burning 400 calories less than the average person per day.
Really?
And where is the thing in these apps where I can put in, I have a slow metabolism? Like that's just not there, right? And then on top of that, I hate to be the bearer of bad news or good news, depending on your perspective, but nutrition labels have the leeway to be off by about 20% anyway. So you have no idea how many calories you are burning or consuming at any given point in time. My advice is just like, if that is something you want to kind of keep track of, it's just a general ballpark figure, just a baseline. Getting too into those numbers, you're just going to go bananas.
You've resolved a lot of guilt because I used to log my calories and lose it, and I would kind of make stuff up, and there would be a similar entry to what I had actually eaten, and I'd be like, whatever. But if nutrition fact labels can be off by 20%, then yeah, I'm going to give up on the whole thing.
Yeah, there's it's like you could just easily just log what you like. You could just easily log what you eat without the calories and be aware of it that way. That's the real benefit of calorie tracking, really. It's just to kind of have some education about what are calorie dense foods, what are calorie expensive foods. I don't know what the actual term is, calorie expensive,
Calorie dense, whatever. So does that mean, so you profiled an app recently called Fantasy Hike, which is another of these, this category of apps that I like a lot that sort of this is not a word, de-tedifies something like running or walking. But that's based on extrapolated calorie burn, right? Can you tell us about that? Is that still worth using an app like that, mostly because it still gets you outside and gets you moving?
Yeah, it's honestly, as a fitness and wearable reviewer, it's really just about tricking yourself into finding what works for you. And that may change from time to time. Like I had a bunch of injuries last year, so I was kind of depressed by all of my metrics because it was like, you used to be faster, stronger, skinnier. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm recovering. Where's my cookie for recovering?
Forgiveness toggle, yeah.
Where's that? And a friend of mine sent Fantasy Hike, which is just a walking app. It tracks your distance, and you basically get to compete against a very copyright-friendly version of Lord of the Rings and other fantasy heroes while you walk toward Mordor. So it's just all progress is good progress in that. And, I love Lord of the Rings, so I get to have little Easter eggs. I'm like, haha, strutting pony in. I know you mean prancing pony in. There's a little Easter egg for me.
Yes.
But there are apps like that. There, actually, the first running app I ever tried was Zombies Run.
Yes.
And it's like a combo between an audiobook and a podcast, but you're running. And they actually recently came out with a partnership with Marvel. So there's like a Marvel version of that now too.
Really?
So yeah, I think it's called Marvel Move. So there are people being creative about that. It's difficult. That particular format is difficult because you have to be writing stories and programming that into actual programs. But I think it's a really good approach because it really is just about tricking yourself into forgetting that you're exercising.
Yeah, in the same kind of vein as Ingress, and then much more famously Pokemon Go got people to go out and walk the neighborhood. When I read a Wired story about Ingress, 6 or 7 years ago, I was like, wait, what? And then I found myself, I was obsessed with it for 6 months, and my step counts were 20,000 steps a day, just because you had to walk to do it. And so I'm glad to hear that concept is continuing to evolve, and I'm going to really hold my breath for a Star Trek branded one of those because I'd love to get notifications like, oh, you walked 6 times around the docking ring, great. I want to ask about Peloton real quick because we mentioned it a second ago. This was huge, obviously, a couple of years ago. I have been a member of plenty of gyms that I've not really gone to too much, but that doesn't matter. I remember the Soloflex commercials with Star Trek fans from my youth. I remember seeing treadmills and exercise bikes and variations thereon everywhere. This is not a new thing. It's so not new that there was a lot of people don't know this. There was an exercise piece of equipment on board the Titanic called the Electric Camel. They say it's good for the liver. I wouldn't know. What makes Peloton special? What made it take off the way it did? Is it just having a host there barking at you, or what?
That's a lot of it. It's actually the content. I've been actually talking to a bunch of longtime dedicated Peloton users for a story I'm working on, which will be out when it's out. But a lot of them, basically, I asked them, what is it about Peloton that draws you in? What is it about this particular company? Because Peloton fans are often described as cultish and super devoted.
Really?
And it is the content. It's the content and the music. And for whatever reason, people develop these parasocial relationships with these instructors. These instructors
Uh,
are like, they're out here. They're Cody Rigsby, who's the most popular one. He's out there. He's got a whole legion of fans called the Boo Crew, and they engage with each other outside of the actual classes. They form communities. So you have this community aspect, you have this content aspect, and you have the fact that there's pretty good music in the Peloton classes because they did their homework with licensing.
really?
Yeah. So I hate treadmills. They are the bane of my existence. I'm a runner, but I just cannot feel like a hamster in a wheel. So the only way, because sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's too cold or too hot, and the treadmill is the only way I'm going to get my training in. Sometimes I put on a little Peloton class and Jess King is out here and she's like, do you know Martin Luther King? He believed in inspiration. And she's just spewing all of this stuff at me. And I look at the clock and I'm like, oh, I've been here for 20 minutes. This is amazing. So that's kind
Yeah.
of what it is. Like you get the gamification aspect of getting streaks in there. You have like these relationships with instructors. It's one way, but it's still a relationship. And that content, the content is what makes Peloton. And they'll cry till the cows come home about how great their hardware is. And it's nice hardware, overpriced, really nice, but overpriced. But the
Yeah.
real product for most people is the classes. It's the content. So it's just kind of removing the friction, having the classes there for you in your home. You don't have to get in your car to go to a gym. You don't have to like do extra things to get started. So removing that friction, giving you something addictive to kind of get you going, and then cementing it with a community. That's kind of just what makes Peloton so sticky for some people. Like if you can't find an instructor you like, or the music just isn't to your taste, you're not going to stick with it. But for the people who it works for, it really works for them.
That's interesting. When you put it that way, it sounds really obvious. But yeah, the parasocial relationship drives so much of what, motivates people. And I get that. It's more than just a TV built into a stationary bike, is what you're saying. Well, that's smart. I might end up with a Peloton at some point. I don't have one of those, but I do have a lot of wearables. I want to get into wearables because they're like some of my most favorite pieces of tech. As with all technology, it feels like fitness tech just keeps shrinking. We've gone from like heart monitors to smartwatches to fitness bands, and now we're down to rings. This is an audio only podcast, but we are both wearing, I think, fitness rings of some kind, unless yours are old school.
I've got some old school ones, but I've also got an Aura ring and an Evie ring on. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And I've got one. I've got a RingCon on.
Right,
They were
okay.
a sponsor of a Mr. Mobile video a long time ago, but I kept it on because it turns out it's actually really good. I don't think rings get enough credit for how much technology is packed into them. Like you take these things off, whether it's an Aura or whatever, and it's like, it's so light. And yet there's a battery in here that can last a week and a Bluetooth radio and a bunch of opticals. It's crazy. What drives people in your experience to choose a ring over, say, a smartwatch, though? Because
Notification fatigue. That is a huge
Oh,
thing. So it's really funny, but David Pierce at The Verge, he's constantly in my DMs. He's like, V, what's the next wearable should I buy? Because I just want steps. I don't want my Apple Watch to be annoying me all the time. The battery is killing me. And so,
Hmm.
David is just the most recent person who came into my DMs asking me that. But I get that question a lot from readers. It's just, they've tried the smartwatch. And at first, it was great for notification triaging. And then it's like, I just got pings and beeps and everything happening all at the same time. That kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And then, there's also another contingent of people for whom sleep tracking is really important. It's something that they're really working on, it's something that they value. Watches, not the best form factor for sleep tracking, just because you need really long battery life. Well,
Yes.
the flagship smartwatches have kind of replaced the fitness bands that had long battery life and a cheap entry price and a comfortable form factor. But now you just have this
Right.
giant mini phone on your wrist. Like I've got an Ultra Apple Watch Ultra 2 on right now. Like you could really knock someone out with this thing.
Yeah, it's a monster. Yeah.
And wearables comfort is king. And for a lot of
Hmm.
people, that's just not a comfortable option for them. They're going to be ripping off the watch in the middle of the night. I watched a friend of mine do it when we were on vacation one time. She just like woke up in the middle of the night, ripped off her Apple Watch, and was like, I can't do it. So
Absolutely.
for those people, rings are actually much more discreet. They're a lot easier to wear. And when you go to a formal function, you don't have to take it off because like, there's that thing of, do I wear an Apple Watch at a wedding?
Oh, that became a thing recently. Yeah, that was all over social.
Yeah.
Like, should I wear this? Should I wear my Apple Watch to a fancy dinner? And I was
Yeah.
8 levels of discourse later. Everyone's fighting. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I know a lot of people who actually don't like to sleep with a watch on. That's a very common thing, and I think I trained myself to do. I've been wearing these things since the Pebbles, so I'm like, yeah, I can wear a watch anytime.
Like this is the rare time that I'm not actually wearing two because I'm trying to figure out which one I'm going to test next.
Yeah,
But generally I'm always double wristing and like I guess I'm double ringing
yeah,
now because I have two of them on. So,
living the dream.
it's great for me because if I could wear like 10 smart rings at a time for testing, that would
It'd
be
be very
great.
efficient, yeah, for the job, right?
Yeah.
We've said I think 4 brands of smart ring already, but I don't think there's any question. Tell me if I'm wrong. That like Aura, it feels like it's running away with it. It feels like
hmm
they have the most mind share. What is driving that? Is it actually a superior product in your experience, or is it mostly down to marketing?
It's a little bit of both. So they had a head start, is what I'm gonna say, because like way back when I first really saw the first like consumer ready smart rings, it was Aura and it was Motive, and
Motive,
then
yeah, sold,
Motive went kaput,
yeah.
and then it was just Aura for a long time in terms of like what's been around, what is there, and they spent a lot in terms of R&D, so their algorithms are quite good.
Hmm.
They just updated their algorithm, I think, a year or two ago to be more accurate compared to gold standard sleep polysomnography. I think that's the term.
Nice.
So, they take the research side of it really, really seriously, but they also benefited just from massive coverage. And like the user base, like we have Prince Harry wears an Aura ring. You have
Whoa.
several like athletes wearing them. I think there was a point in time where Jennifer Aniston went on a late night show and she's like, I am addicted to my Aura ring.
Oh
Kim
man.
Kardashian and Gwyneth Paltrow were having like a sleep score contest on Instagram. So, that's really going to like penetrate the non-techie crowd, right? That's going to get people going, "Oh, they wear a smart ring. Like maybe I should wear a smart ring." And then when you had COVID, they partnered with the NBA for reopening
Oh, really?
stuff.
Oh, so they've
Yes.
just really effectively messaged. They've really done a series of marketing coups, but on the back of a product that actually is
Yeah.
really works
It's
well.
a very solid product and they're constantly in my inbox just like, "Hey, we got a new feature coming out. Hey, we got a new partnership coming out. Hey, we got this coming out." And they're currently partnered with Best Buy. So you could walk into a Best Buy store and actually kind of try it out because I think the biggest friction with smart rings is sizing
Finger sizing,
because
right?
you got to get
Yeah.
you got to get the sizing kit, then you
Yeah.
got to send it in. That's a lot of friction, so it's kind of not an immediate. It's not like an impulse buy. You have to kind of really think that out.
So that says to me that you need a fair amount of logistical prowess and you need some established established presence in the retail space to kind of even dream of competing. And the next sizable competitor to enter the space has all of that. Do you think Samsung's Galaxy Ring is going to come in and just kind of crush everybody else? I know we have to cover it. We have to see how it actually works and stuff like that. But I mean, it's a big danger to everyone else in the category, isn't it?
Oh, I think Aura should be shaking in their boots a little bit. And it's really funny because the day it happened, they sent me a press statement that was like to the effect of, "We're not scared." And I was like, "Oh, unprompted." Okay. Unprompted, we're not scared. And I was like,
Protest too much.
"Oh, are you sure? Are you sure?" But I think the thing that Samsung really has going for it is an ecosystem. So, they can bundle products together, right? They can bundle their phone, their watch, their ring together for a discounted price. And you'd be like, "Oh, hey, that makes total sense. And it's financially smart." And then I always tell people that my favorite sleep tracking combo is to have a watch and a ring, because I never have to worry about something losing battery. Because the watch
fair enough.
is, I can basically put it on the nightstand, on the charger, and not worry about my sleep data, because my sleep data is from one of the various smart rings I am testing.
One of these things.
And that gets fed into the Health Kit or the Health Connect API. So that all works.
Yeah.
But with Samsung, you could have that all live within the Samsung Health ecosystem, and it would be super convenient. So if this is a product that, I really, if their marketing team listens to this, come hit your girl up and give me some royalties for the idea. But
I'll make a note.
But yeah, no. So, if they were to go, "Hey, get this Galaxy Watch and Samsung Galaxy Ring bundle, lower the price, perfect sleep tracking for you there." I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, that's so easy. That's so convenient. There's no friction there."
Yeah.
And Samsung can do that. Samsung has the massive global recognition that Aura might be the best known, but they're not at the level that Samsung is in terms of global recognition.
Right.
So it's just like, I'm so excited for this ring. I think it might be my most anticipated product of the year. It has to be good.
It has to, of course. Yeah.
It has to be good, but the potential there is really striking.
Yeah, it is. And it does remind me a little bit of when Samsung announced what they called, I think, the first generation, the Galaxy Gear, their first smartwatch.
Right.
And, it wasn't the first smartwatch. There were pre-existing products in the marketplace, but Samsung came in, made a huge splash. That product left a lot to be desired, and it needed a lot of iteration actually to get to a place where it was any good for most people. But in the process, I think it caused a lot of the competition to redouble their efforts, and the whole segment got a lot better eventually. So I kind of hope that happens. The Ring segment, I feel like is right around the same age that the smartwatch segment was at that time.
Yeah, it is.
So it's going to be fun to see the ones that, the competitors that go wild and decide to do like a display or something crazy, something that I would like, something that would contribute to the notification burnout that everyone else is trying to avoid. That's what I like. I like leaning against going against the current.
I mean, the health aspect of it is what I think they're going to lean into first, just because the underside of your finger is actually a more accurate place to gather heart rate readings than your wrist.
Now, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
The wrist is actually one of the worst places that you could get heart rate data from, just because there is so much noise happening with your arm movements, with your tendons moving, with your capillaries and all of that. It's actually one of the worst places.
Wow.
But the underside of your ring, there's not as much skin that it has to go through in terms of melanin, because, melanin does impact how light reflects off of your skin.
Right.
It's not as much of a problem on the palm, which is why all the sensors always want you to be having it on the bottom side of your finger.
Got it. Which was a new thing I had to learn. Yeah, the first time I put on RingCon, it was like the two bumps. I was like, wait, where do these go? Oh, they go on the underside. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I had no idea.
It's because that's one of the most accurate places that you're going to get a heart rate reading from. Huh. The other being your ear. So go figure.
And that's why, so we've seen earbuds with heart rate tracking in them. They're odd. I feel like that's not a standard feature, but
it's one of those things where there's a lot of potential, because the ear could get you really, really accurate readings, but everyone's ear, the fit, it's so hard, right? Like you buy a pair of earbuds and there's 20,000 different tips in there
Yeah,
because no one knows how it's going to fit properly. And the ones that I've tested, getting the fit so that the sensor can actually read my heart rate was always the hardest part. So
makes sense.
hence the ring.
Got
The
it.
ring's kind of best of both worlds.
I love that. I didn't know. I thought I was familiar with all the reasons that the rings have started to become more popular. Let's talk about what some of the market that the ring is like taking from, because we have this in-betweener category before we get to real watches, and that's like this weird subcategory that wasn't weird back in the day when the category was more nascent, when you had the Fuel Band and the early Fitbits and stuff. But we still have these kind of not exactly a watch, like the Whoop, which is a very difficult thing for me to say and take seriously. I don't know why I have such a problem with this brand name, but I don't know. But Whoop and Fitbit are still around, even though Google owns it. There's still things you can buy, or these heart monitor things you wear around your chest. These all feel to me like their days are numbered. Like this category is going to disappear in favor of a combination of rings and proper watches. Am I off track with that at all?
For the mainstream audience, I think you're on the right track, but we can't discount the fitness fanatics because for them, accuracy is king. And the reason why we have chest straps and why some people will always use chest straps is because it is the most accurate for heart rate.
The most
because
accurate.
it is actually using electrical signals to read your heartbeat. It's actually reading your heartbeat. All of these other devices that we're talking about, they're using something called a PPG sensor. It's shining light into your skin, and based on the patterns of light that get reflected back, it's estimating what your pulse is, and it's using your pulse as a proxy for your heart rate. So it's basically kind of like an indirect reading. It's not quite as direct. So, the chest strap, it's always going to give you a direct reading. It's always going to be the most accurate. So for those people who really, really care about that, the chest strap is going to be I think that's going to be hard to beat.
Got it.
And then on top of that, stuff like Whoop, their clientele is hardcore athletes.
Really?
Like super hardcore athletes who, yep. And their platform works because they're like, we're going to tell you exactly when you can optimize your recovery. So that's their focus. They're not really trying to do anything else other than tell you how to be at your most peak and optimal performance with these very convoluted graphs that took me forever to understand with like strain and all of these things. That I think Whoop is in a little bit more trouble because the Oura Ring does a lot of that too. They do a lot with the readiness feature, which is why you see it creeping into every single smartwatch. Readiness scores.
Yeah.
Like that is what a lot of people want.
Is this what Garmin calls like your your training readiness, like the kind of and the body battery, which I was going to mention later too. I like those novel ways of presenting health data that are, I don't know, they were novel maybe 10 years ago, but they're still exciting to me because that's like, it's usable information. One of the only times that I have exercised extensively was to take a 100-mile e-bike ride last year. And my Garmin was so confused that I was actually doing anything. And it's, after the end of my first day, which I think I rode 60 miles, it was just like training readiness, 0. And it like all of the needles were pegged in the absolute worst direction possible. And it was essentially screaming at me to rest. And I actually really appreciated that because I expected it. But, it wasn't all that long ago that technology would just give you these kind of dumb indicators with no context. It would just tell you what your average heart rate was for the day. So I can really appreciate some intelligent approaches to presenting that data. What about like things like the Withings Smart Scale, right? Like there's so many data points that are being captured right now. I think I have one of these, and it reads your bone mass, it reads your muscle mass, it reads your
there's definite data fatigue. And I always say in my reviews that data without context isn't all that useful for anyone.
Right.
So that is a challenge that a lot of these companies are having, because I'm always asking them, I'm like, how am I supposed to use this data? How am I supposed to interpret this data? And the best most people can give you are scores. And then just telling you, well, this is so that you know what your baseline is. And so when you veer from the baseline, you have an idea. of like what's up. But like the body analysis metrics, the Samsung smartwatch and the Withings scales, they both claim to do body impedance analysis, so they can tell you your bone mass, your muscle mass, your fat mass. This is one of the most inaccurate forms of tech that there currently is.
Really?
So you always have to take it with a very, 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 very big grain of salt, because the way it works is just
Is it
very
measuring
difficult.
like electrical resistance? Is that what the deal is? Because you got to be barefoot
Yes.
on these scales, right? So it's putting a
Yes.
current through your body basically and measuring how much resistance your body offers to it.
So it's called bioelectrical impedance analysis, BIA, because that's a big load of medical sounding words.
Sure.
So they're sending a circuit through your body, right? And based on how fast it goes, it's estimating the resistance of that current. So fat has a different level of resistance than water, than muscle does. So they're estimating it that way, but what they're not telling you is that an electric current will always take the shortest path. So a lot of the times when you step on a scale, unless you get the Withings scale that also has the handles, it's just basically measuring your lower body. It may not be reflecting your upper body quite as well.
Interesting.
So it's all of these things where it's just like people come into my DMs and they're always like, how accurate is this? And I was like, well, do you want the short answer, or do you want the paragraph explanation about why you have to take all of this with a grain of salt?
Wow.
And so again, it's good for tracking long-term trends, but don't put too much stock into it just yet. Like BIA is very accurate in clinical settings. We are not in clinical settings.
Got it. Keep talking about the future a little bit. It seems like the obvious next frontier for a lot of this is going to be blood glucose monitoring and like features for those with diabetes. How far are we from a smartwatch that can, take the place of the current monitoring equipment that I see some of my friends wearing with the patches and the separate modules and things? Are we too
let me
far away
get
from
my
that?
other soapbox that I have hidden under here.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's why we have you. Many soapboxes.
Non-invasive blood glucose monitoring is the holy grail for the medical and the medical tech community, and it has been for a very, 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 very long time. And I'll throw a really shocking statistic at you, because I wrote a really deep dive into this last year. But we started looking into non-invasive blood glucose monitoring in 1975. That is how long we have been plugging away at this problem. Because it's not fun to do the pinprick test. It's not fun to it's invasive. It's not great. So with that said, we are very, 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 very far. Don't believe what people say. We are far away from this happening, because there's so many factors that make smartwatches very difficult in terms of accuracy. For people with diabetes, this is life or death, right? It's not like, oh, you got an alert that your heart rate was high and it was wrong. Fine, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, it's not getting a calorie count wrong and lose it. Yeah. Right.
If you get these blood sugar readings off and it's informing someone's treatment, that is life or death. And so, that means blood glucose monitoring has to be regulated by the FDA. And whenever you get into FDA regulation, you have to just do years of proving that you've done the clinical trials, of proving that you have all the privacy protocols in place. You have to prove that you are HIPAA compliant if you're going to go through that process. It is long, it is rigorous. And then on top of that, the tech itself it's not fully there.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just policy, right? It's a technology limitation still at this point, right?
You're going to do, I think the most common method that people are looking at in terms of smartwatches is infrared light. And that can easily be thrown off. Like, it's a hot day. Oh, maybe your blood sugar spiked. Maybe it didn't. Who knows? That could throw off that reading. So some really small companies out there are looking into alternative methods, like using radio frequencies. We just have to see where that goes. We're in a stage where I think you're going to see more of the continuous glucose monitors, which are the patches that you wear for a certain period of time. I think that you're going to start to see being marketed towards people without diabetes as a kind of a fitness, weight loss kind of management type of thing.
Oh, curious.
And then also for people with type 2 diabetes, because, type 1 is the one that's very serious. You produce little to no insulin. It's life or death if you get the wrong measurement. Type 2, that's the type of diabetes that you develop over the course of a life. It's preventable, and if you have pre-diabetes, it's reversible. So it's a huge portion
Ah,
of,
yeah.
like, of all the people with diabetes, the vast majority have type 2. So continuous glucose monitors could potentially be
Could give
helpful
you the
for
heads up.
that
Oh, yeah.
group.
Oh, companies are going to just leap right at the chance to
They
serve that
they are
market.
currently working on it. When I was at CES, I met up with Dexcom, and Dexcom is one of the really big CGM companies, and they're actually working on a CGM for people who are non-insulin dependent. So it's to help them kind of really understand what spikes their blood glucose, how they can prevent it, how they can, keep their condition in check. So that's like where I think we'll be seeing a lot more of with the continuous glucose monitors. But smartwatches, I mean, Apple's been working on this for over a decade. Samsung has been working on it for a really long time. I really hope that they get there. But I think the last rumor that we heard was from Mark Gurman, Bloomberg last year, and they said they had shrunk it to the size about of an iPhone. And I'm like, well, you still got a long ways to go in order to shrink it to the size of a watch. Then,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
it's it, we're going to be waiting a long time for smartwatches to actually have this capability in a meaningful way. And then when it comes out, it's probably not going to be used in the way that you think. It'll probably be kind of a much like how the AFib and the EKG features are. It's like, hey, heads up, something looks a little weird. You might want to go to a doctor. It's not going to be necessarily something that informs treatment because then again, you're going into the medical device territory.
Right. And there's just so many variables, and there's so much at stake. If you get anything wrong, they're going to have to hedge on the side of caution until the
Yeah.
technology continues to develop. I get it. Well, it's all right. I've waited long enough for enough of these developments. We can wait some more. I'll still be around. It'll be okay. I I have a question that I've kind of thought up too late in this podcast's life cycle, but doesn't stop me from asking now. I know how the question is as a phone reviewer when people ask me, but what phone do you use really? I'm like, it's kind of a meaningless question because our jobs is to swap things out all the time. But like, what combination of tech do you use? If you, in the hypothetical world and you're on vacation and you have taken off all your review units and you're only wearing the things that you want to use, what's your combination of tech to stay healthy?
I generally use a combination of the Apple Watch and the Aura Ring, but sometimes I will swap out the Apple Watch for a Garmin, depending on where I am in a training cycle. It's become a little more fuzzy now that the Ultra is here, which is why, despite having very petite wrists, I kind of use the Ultra more frequently than not.
Hmm.
But yeah, I actually would love to just only wear a smartwatch and a ring if it's just me. Normally, I'm like I've got at least like three to five things on me, but Apple Watch is just, I hate to say it, but it works with all of my Apple products and it works with my iPhone. And, the Garmin,
Yeah,
I do like gravitate towards the Garmin because it's also platform agnostic. So it doesn't matter what phone you have. And that's so
same.
rare. It's so rare
Yes.
in this point in time because Fitbit, well, they're starting to work better with Google. Wear OS ever since we made the switch to Wear OS 3, it's kind of been like more stratified. You don't really have that many Wear OS watches that work with iPhone anymore, which I find to be really, really disappointing because I would love to not always have to wear this thing. I like a little
The Apple
diversity
Watch.
in
Yeah, of
in
course.
my rotation, but this is the most popular smartwatch in the world. Actually, I think it's the most popular watch in the world at this point.
I think that's true.
So
Yep.
I just kind of have to know what's up for my job.
See, that's where you're wrong. See, you could pivot and you could only cover things that are weird and niche and odd, and then you'd be me. It's real fun. Come on over and do it.
I mean, I
It's
have
really
two
enjoyable.
wrists. I have two wrists. So the my other wrist is for a rotating cast of weird niche things, and actually that's the wrist I think is a little more fun.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I understand. Victoria Song, yeah, I've taken more of your time than I anticipated, but thank you for informing us all about a ton of stuff that I didn't know. I'm sure a lot of my listeners are already reading a lot more of your stuff, but I'm definitely going to go back and refresh myself because I had a lot of catching up to do, and I'm glad you helped me get started on that. Thank you so much. Is there any place in particular you'd like to direct our listeners to follow you on the internet?
Well, my handle on all the platforms is at Vic M Song, so you can find me sometimes on X. I'm still there. I'm still looking, guys, because sometimes y'all send me nice messages. But these days I'm mostly on Threads and Instagram, so just at Vic M Song there.
Perfect. I am in the same places, so I will see you there.
See you there, and thanks for having me.
So there you have it. Even though we might have already eclipsed the glitzed out squash courts of Outland, we're a long way from the holographic calisthenics programs of Star Trek The Next Generation. Before we get there, we've got a lot of progress to make, from microscopic circuits to policy boardrooms. But as someone who didn't really pay close attention to health and fitness products before preparing for this podcast, I gotta say, it does seem like this is one of the most exciting frontiers in technology today. And I'm pretty jazzed to see where its future takes us. If you have thoughts on that future, send them to me. I'm online far more often than I am at the gym at Captain Two Phones. It's Captain 2 Phones on Threads and Instagram. Until next time, thanks one more time to my sponsor, MediaTek, and thanks to you for listening. I've been Michael Fisher, and I'll see you in the future.